All right. Welcome, everyone, to HFPod on tour. I am Brian Brinkman once again, hanging with you here Sunday morning, August 29th. We are here to recap the second of three nights at the Gorge Amphitheater in wonderfully named George Washington. I feel like if George Washington had lived long enough to know that there'd be a place in the middle of nowhere in Washington named after him, he'd actually be really happy with where the country went, because George Washington is a beautiful, beautiful part of America. I love it out there. I've been there once. We're going to talk with someone who is on the ground, on site right now, Ben Gardner, one of my favorite people in the fish world, someone I've been really looking forward to talking with for a while. He's at the show. He's not right now. He's at his hotel hanging out, recovering from the show last night, getting ready for night 3. We're going to dive into the show, kind of go deep on what happened last night. How did it compare, contrast with the night before? But also what will be really cool is Ben saw the 3-night run at Deer Creek a bit earlier this summer. So we'll be able to kind of get his perspective on kind of where the band is now, where were they at a few weeks back. Before we do all that, though, I want to give you a reminder here. HFPod on Tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. We are so happy to be presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. They have been amazing for us throughout the entirety of this summer tour. Quick reminder, quick plug, please visit shiftcannabis.com. Anytime between now and Dick's Saturday, so 1 week from yesterday, register to win 2 tickets to Fish's October 30th and 31st shows in Las Vegas, Nevada, the MGM Grand Garden Arena. If you know anything about Fish, and if you're watching this, I'm guessing you do, Halloween, typically either cover an album or reinvent a album to, or just create an album out of nowhere and play it live in full, debut a bunch of new songs. But the night before the night, October 30th, that is an incredible opportunity to see Fish. That's an incredible night. Just thinking back, the 2016 show was an absolutely incredible Fish show from that overall tour, just right before the Halloween gig. So 2 really great shows. You'll get tickets to both, as well as hotel, as well as $500 towards airfare. So register at shiftcannabis.com. Daily between now and next Saturday, we'll be hosting a live event 1 week from today in the Dick's Lot, where we will be announcing the winner. I also want to shout out our media partner, Jambase. We're so grateful to partner with Jambase on so many great projects. They are an incredible partner. They help to get the word out about Osiris Media, and we absolutely love what they do over there. Jam band news, music news, reviews. There's so much that happens over at Jambase. It's really fantastic. If you haven't heard Clusterflies yet, we interviewed Dave from Jambase about Clusterflies back in the spring. Great compilation record of songs debuted during the Farmhouse era for Fish. So really amazing stuff. With that, I'm going to bring on our guest here, Ben Gardner. How are you, my man?
Doing well. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing very well. You are recovering, I'm guessing, from night 2 at the Gorge. I think you said this before we went live. This is your first time at the Gorge. Is that correct?
This is my first time at the Gorge. We're doing all 3 nights, and it is everything and more than you can expect. I just want to say, if you're watching this, if you're thinking about getting to the Gorge, get to the Gorge.
Well, I've got to imagine you've been following Fish for some time. I've got to imagine you heard that advice from someone multiple times over the last few runs that Fish has done there. What was it that, before we get into the music, like, what was the inspiration for you to go to the Gorge this year, and what are your thoughts on it, seeing it in person?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll start by saying, some people might be saying, "Oh, look at him in a cushy hotel room, guilty." But I did have a little bit of FOMO about not doing the camping experience. So I'm bringing that perspective. I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. With the bright lights in the camping lot. So shout out to those of you who are. But for me, it actually starts with the music of, hearing like old Pearl Jam shows, some of the other bands I was into, like Dave Matthews Band, that played iconic shows here. When younger point in my life, you kind of, you get a sense, okay, the Gorge is a special venue. Then you start reading about it and seeing the pictures. And for me, there's a certain charm to the fact that you have to go through a little bit of a hassle to get here, right? We flew into Seattle. I have to rent a car, drive 3 hours. I enjoy that aspect of it, but and then the scenery. I mean, just to take you real quickly, we actually went out on the Columbia River yesterday and did some kayaking. And I want to shout out, I think it's on Reddit, the Fish Hiker's Guide. They've linked to some pretty amazing material about the geology of just how this part of the country, came to be.
Totally.
But the scenes on the river were just breathtaking. It was a perfect tone setter for the show. So I'm really enjoying it so far.
Awesome. Well, you're like me. You're a Midwestern kid. You're in Detroit now. Is that correct?
I am. Yeah.
Right on. I grew up in Chicago, and I remember I said this yesterday, but like it just goes without saying. I remember, reading the Fish book and opening the page where they're playing at the Gorge, and like 16 years old in my, childhood bedroom, getting into Fish, being like, oh my God, I cannot believe like that they played here. I have to go here at some point. And when I got there in 2011, it felt like just a total accomplishment in my overall Fish career, if you will. It was amazing. It's beautiful out there, and it's such a special place to see the band.
There's no replacement for coming over that hill. I know it's what everyone says, but it's true. And yes, and also what I appreciate so far is we were on the floor the first night, and you can pretty much, if you get in there, by 6:30, my sense so far is you can get wherever you want to be.
Sure.
And I think that's in part due to this laid back, West Coast atmosphere, which frankly, we don't have as much of in the Midwest, or certainly on the East Coast, with love to our friends in both regions. But I enjoyed that because we were on the floor. And then yesterday we were just above right around the mezzanine between the lawn and the seating area, the grass seating area with like 3 extended rows. I don't know what the technical name is, but it was perfect because you could see the view, you could feel the breeze. And the sound was just amazing, just to the left of the soundboard.
Man.
So.
I was elevated when I was there, just like a little bit above the floor. And to your point, you could see everything behind the stage. You get a great sight line, great sound, but you get that breeze in the second set, which is really nice.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't fault you in any way for the hotel room. I learned at Magna Ball, a hotel for a 3-night Fish run is essential. Hate on me all you want. Yes, I understand the appeal of camping, but I'm there with you, man. Once I got into my 30s, it was sleeping in a hotel in a festival setting. Well, let's talk about the music. So you saw the Deer Creek shows earlier this summer, a couple weeks back. Give me just like a quick rundown. What was your impression of that overall run, and kind of leaving those 3 nights? What were your impressions of where Fish was at in 2021?
Oh, it was a great run. I enjoyed it. I thought, it was interesting because I think night 1 was sort of the standout show. Not that we're ranking here, but it was, I think the one that left the longest impression, if you will. But what I really enjoyed was I thought that they really tied the weekend together well between night 1, night 2, night 3, because night 1 you get, some incredible musical concepts. This is a band really listening to each other at a level that is as good as it gets, and that's one of my favorite things about Fish. It's just their ability to listen to each other, respond accordingly, but that's not just true in the jams too. It's also true in the compositions. I mean, we'll get to last night, but you can't execute Divided Sky or Esther if you're not listening to what the other 3 guys in that band are doing. And so that's my favorite aspect of Fish. And so you have that super, impressive, musically proficient night 1. And then night 3 was, all bets are off. I still don't know what the set list was of set 2 of Deer Creek. But it was fun. And those of us that were there know it was fun. We were having fun. So, we were able to kind of get the full experience. And, I think another takeaway that so far is playing out here in the Gorge was, we have a crowd that is willing to give them, and a fan base that's willing to let this band try new things and evolve. I mean, it continues to impress me that you kind of look up and all of a sudden, hey, Blaze On is like a fan favorite. And maybe I'm just speaking for myself here, but when Blaze On came out, it was a fun song, right? But I was, a little hesitant to embrace it. I mean, Blaze On, come on, guys. But that song is now, a real staple of the live Fish experience. And I came away from that weekend just with such an appreciation that they're continuing to add new jam staples, and they're continuing to trust this audience, and likewise the audience trusts the band, to incorporate this newer material, and also material that hasn't necessarily been mentioned in the with all the classics, and they're just to use the wrestling phrase, they're getting these songs over, and the crowd is really enjoying it. So Deer Creek was an amazing weekend. I think it was one of my favorite runs of Fish so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a really good point. A song like Blaze On came out 6 summers ago, and has slowly but surely, it's had big moments. I think it was the second performance was the Shoreline one in 2015, where it went into a great 14-15 minute jam. There was a great version at Magna Ball, great New Year's Eve version, and then it kind of settled into being like a rock song. Awesome version at the Baker's Dozen, and now you kind of seen it 5-6 years later, and you're absolutely right. It really feels like it's a part of the rotation now. It really feels like it's a classic Fish song. It's amazing that in the band's 32nd year, they debuted a song that now, for me personally, the Blaze On from that Deer Creek run is the best jam of the summer. I love the simple, I love the interstellar journey that they took us on during that jam. But when I want to listen to a melodic Fish jam with, where it sounds like they're writing the song mid jam, I go to that Blaze On, and hearing them play that, transitioning to the Gorge here, night one, obviously didn't go as far out there. Well, I guess you could, I don't know. It wasn't as long as the Deer Creek one, but the bottom fell out of it, and it went into this completely new jamming territory, and kind of helped to shift the direction of the first night of the Gorge show, which is, it's just wild to see, how there's it's a song that can just amalgamate in so many different ways, and kind of move and shift in so many different ways, which was just wild. And obviously the larger theme, it felt like, from night one at the Gorge was this very mellow, very atmospheric vibe. And hearing that in Blaze On, Split Open and Melt, What's the Use, Chalk Dust Torture, Camel Walk, you really heard the band just play in this sort of airy fashion that was really interesting, and contrasted a lot of cases to what we heard at Deer Creek.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think going back to sort of the more mellow vibe of night one, I am an unabashed fan of Leaves. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably picked up on that.
Likewise.
I think if David Bowie wrote it, a lot of the people who claim not to like it would call it a classic song. But I just was so excited to see what they might do with that, because I think the Baker's Dozen version, early before they recorded it, I think it sounded a little disjointed in the live setting, but you could tell, based on how they talked about it and just how it sounded in the studio, there's a lot of love put into that song, and I think that was borne out by the fact that they were sound checking it, which was fun to hear as we were checking out the winery. But that song, in the first set really set, I think, a great tone. And then to your point about Blaze On, I think the fact that it was able to segue into something that went right into Lifeboat, right? I'm not getting that wrong.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah. That was just a really, that was a kind of a pivotal moment in the show where it wasn't quite sure, you weren't quite sure, is this flowing? Is it not? And it was flowing. It was just a different kind of flow than, some of these shows like last night or, Deer Creek 1. But that's okay, especially if you're going to a 3-night run. I come to appreciate the different styles that they play with.
Well, let me ask you, because from the couch and from my own personal musical interests, the first night of the Gorge was one of my personal favorite shows of the overall tour. I don't expect that to be like it's kind of a weird, controversial show in some ways. Like there's a lot of strange song placements. It seemed like so much hinged on did they mean to play Split Open and Melt or not? Well, okay, we're going to play it the fourth song of the show. And the only way we know how to play this song now is just to drop into an atmospheric jam. And then obviously the second set flowed in a thematic way, but was very, very, very mellow. Like at any point where it thought like, we're going to get a rock peak here, the bottom dropped out and they just went into this like Eno kind of sick at this type of vibe. On site, in the venue, what was it like for you? Did it feel like it moved too slow, or did it feel thematic? Like how was it from your end?
Yeah, it felt pretty good. Again, we were on the floor, and I think we had better perspective on the crowd last night, though I thought it was a strong crowd night one as well. I would be remiss if I didn't say, in terms of tone setters, I mean, Torn and Frayed, the tribute to Charlie Watts, rest in peace. Yeah. I think that was a pretty powerful tone setter.
Totally.
And maybe I'm biased because I may or may not have been crying. But something in that moment for me, it hits you. Yeah. We all joke, I think, as music fans, well, the Rolling Stones will play until they're 95, maybe 100.
Well, we thought they would, yeah.
Right. Well, but they're not,
Charlie
Watts died, and it's sad, right? But so for me, this is going to sound cheesy, but when they opened with Torn and Frayed, it was just all coming to a head that, we're not going to be able to do this forever. And I think the backdrop of postponing the Tahoe shows, which, kudos to the band, I think making the best of a tough situation. Some feeling hit me that, we better enjoy this while we can. And so that was the tone setter for me. It was that very specific reaction to Torn and Frayed. But I think, you mentioned the split in the 3 or 4 spot. One thing I can't emphasize enough about the Gorge this time of year that's so wonderful, this whole show is under darkness, and so I think they're more likely to get weird early, and I enjoyed that split very much. I thought it was great. I think it left open, a lot of curiosity from the fans about what was next, and I think maybe they took a little bit of a left turn, but I'm with you. I enjoyed the set 2. I enjoyed the whole show. And I think that, maybe I'm in a different position than someone just going to Friday as the only show of the run, but I tend to look at these runs as, almost all one show to, quote,
totally,
and so I enjoyed it very much, and I think I'll be going back to it. I think it'll be growing on me. Having said that, the second show is one of those shows that just kind of knocked me on my ass right away. So, yeah.
Well, let's get to that. But before we do, I just really, really prescient point about, the Torn and Frayed opener. And like, one thing I've noticed this whole tour is in some of Phish's best moments, they sound frustrated to me, and they don't sound frustrated with each other. They sound frustrated with like the situation that they found themselves in, where, they've written all this music. They've really started to showcase themselves in a different light towards the tail end of the 2010s. COVID hits, they lose an entire year, maybe year and a half, we don't really know, of playing. And, they're almost at this point now where like, if I were in their shoes, I would almost look back and be like, man, like, look at, we gave up a year and a half from 2000 to 2002. We lost 5 years from 04 to 09. We were at, in peak health, where our friendship is really tight. We're making a lot of music, and then a year was ripped away from us. That sense of like, this will all end at some point, I think is probably coming very close to them. And having someone like Charlie Watts pass away, who's just been a figure in classic rock lore and classic rock history for as long as, people like you and I can remember. We obviously, the Rolling Stones were long past their peak period when we were born. But, for the guys in Phish, like, they've been watching this band their whole life. And I got to imagine there was something like, that sort of sentiment hanging over the show. And that'll give me a different way to listen to it. But transitioning to night 2, as we talked before we went live, If Fish could have sent any sort of a message that this night will be a little bit different from the night before, Carini is probably the best way to do that. So they come out and they open up with not just Carini, but like a 15-minute version of Carini that goes into an incredible jam. What was kind of your takeaway when that started?
Yeah, my takeaway right away was, all right, we're gonna play the fight riff to the old Chappelle Show skit, and I loved it, and the crowd, the one thing that I noticed throughout the show is very few people in the concession stands. You had a good bird's eye view of the stands on the floor, and then you could look around. The crowd was into it the whole show, and I personally was thinking back, not to belabor the point, but Deer Creek 1 had the Carini opener. This was a little bit similar, and you know what? That's okay. I have a few rules and a few songs that I'd be perfectly fine with them playing every single night, and a Carini that transitions to a major key jam to set the tone for the show is absolutely one of those. It was great, and I think the pairing of that with Maze was in case people hadn't gotten the signal that this is going to be a little bit of a different night, they knew then. And there's just a moment in that peak. Well, actually, one quick observation about the Maze, when Trey is playing those chords. And sorry, I'm not a professional musician, so I won't try and get it over my head here. But some of his rhythm guitar playing in Maze is so weird and difficult to follow for the average person, let alone geeks like us who really love the band. But one thing I noticed was, the crowd was air guitaring every chord that he was playing as Page was playing a solo. And it just showed that the crowd was absolutely locked into a level that's just a little bit above normal. And the peak, Fishman was just almost like trolling Trey, but they were just having a blast. And I think they hit that peak pretty hard. Yeah. And we just loved it. So that, and then, I guess I look at that, those two songs in 46 Days kind of in the same way I looked at the opening 3 songs to Deer Creek Night 1. They all kind of run together. And, you think, okay, is this going to be a straight ahead rocker 46 Days? Or is it going to be more of a jam 46 Days? And you know what? Like, it was kind of both. They had that long ambient jam in the middle, and then they brought back the chorus and let Trey, bring us home with a rocking guitar solo. And what more could you want? So, we were off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, it's both of those jams show you, and it's the interesting aspect of when they play a jam like the 46 Days or the Carini in set 1 versus set 2. You get a 14-minute jam in set 1, and it's like, okay, that was more than I ever would have asked for. I just want to hear a little bit of outside the box creativity and playing, and to basically get out of the first 3 songs go around 35-40 minutes, and 2 of those take up the meat of it with improvisation. It's just a clear sign, like you were saying about Deer Creek. By the time that they ended the sand, you knew, okay, this band is feeling something in a way that like I was not expecting, and it kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. And the other thing I was thinking, like, and we can talk about this as we get through the show, but like I find in the first 4 sets of this leg of the tour, they're really making a conscious effort to play songs in placements that they don't necessarily belong. And that's something I love when like a new song, or excuse me, like an old song comes into a new spot and you hear it differently and it affects the show differently. And I think specifically Maze. It's not really the type of song you would hear in the second spot of a show, but like right there, everyone's already elevated from the band just simply walking out on stage and playing the first song. You get a jam out of Carini, and then suddenly you get Melt, and it just like raises the intensity of the show almost immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, part of that probably goes back to the fact that the sun is down at this point, and, Fish is just a little weirder and more intense when the sun goes down. But I thought that, I think to your point about playing songs where they may not normally be placed. I think it just speaks to the confidence of the band right now. And again, something I love to talk about and think about, which is the trust between the fans and the band, which goes both ways.
Totally.
I just love it. So
yeah, there's an ability right now where like the band seems to understand like we can put out a risk, and that was part of the thing I loved about Friday night show was it's a very risky show. The band could have totally fallen on their faces playing a show like that, and instead they're fully trusting the fan base that, hey, this may not be your thing, this may not be what you expected, this may not be what you wanted, but you're at least going to follow us along with it, and you're going to stick with us. And that's something that like any sort of artist would kill for. Running through the first set, what were some of your other highlights of it? Obviously, we had a couple bust outs, and we had some unexpected songs a little bit later as well.
Yeah, so this is I think my first Esther, and was kind of hoping / expecting it. We went down to the Cave B Winery. Sorry, I'm not trying to do free ads, but we went down to a winery near the Gorge, which was a wonderful way to use the time, and we could hear the sound check. So,
cool.
And so we heard the night before Leaves and Esther, and I Never Left Home. But yeah, I think Esther was pretty well played. I've listened to it once back. Maybe a couple hiccups here or there, but it sounded great. And something that throughout the night, other songs come to mind where the composed guitar lines are sort of iconic. I'm thinking like the riff and Bug. I'm thinking absolute Melody and Divided Sky. Down with Disease. It's hard to put my finger on this, but one thing I noticed, and this is true in Esther, is just like the composed guitar solo sets the mood just perfectly for the moment. Lizards is another guitar solo in this realm that has this effect for me. And one thing I thought about throughout the show, Swept Away Steep had this. There were a lot of songs throughout the night where I think the composition of the song itself served the energy of the show in a really positive direction. And it was one of those shows where like the jams, the songs, the compositions, the quiet parts, the loud parts, they all worked, and they all had the crowd really, enthralled and paying attention. And that was a really beautiful thing that I just observed.
I noticed that while watching it last night, and then it came right back to me as I was listening to it again this morning. Mountains in the Mist. I've been a big advocate that like this. Some of my favorite moments, if not my favorite moments this whole summer, have been the ballads. And that is not something I ever really expected to say about Fish in any previous year. I loved, energy, deep, dark jams. Like there's something about the way that they're approaching these ballads throughout the tour that just showcase a band that is, to your point, they're listening to each other. They're trusting in their reception that they're going to get from the audience. And, age, emotions, all that sort of stuff are kind of, putting into play what they're choosing to play and when they're choosing to play it. And getting Mountains in the Mist right in the middle of the second set, you've got that breeze, like the wind coming through the gorge. Like it just it's the perfect time for it. And they really took it down to like just silence before they came in with the final little chorus. And then that goes perfectly into Sense and Subtle Sounds and just sets up the intro so well.
I'm so glad, Brian, that came across for you because it was powerful. It was very powerful. I caught What's the Use of, caught some quiet, powerful moments at Fish shows before. This one is up there. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I'm sure, going back, listening over the years, something will click, but that was really powerful. And also their vocal harmonies on Mountains in the Mist were strong and just really well delivered. But I love that. And frankly, it was, Sense was fun because, because of the shenanigans. I think it was at Atlantic City where they dropped the intro, then they played the intro with the Momo dance, which I thought was hilarious. One of those I see what he did there moments that we love about the band. But I didn't know if they were going to play Sense, because who knows where this band's going.
Right.
So when they executed that really quiet, beautiful intro, and then played not just a great song, a version of the song, but really took that jam to some amazing places. That to me took the show from a great show to a truly memorable Fish show. So I really loved it, and I also thought Sand and Down to Disease were great. Never gonna complain about 30 minutes, 35 minutes of those two songs coming out of set two.
Yeah.
But to me, it all came together after that. That Mountains in the Mist and Sense combo, and Bug is another kind of song that I don't know if we call it a ballad or not, because
it's kind of in that like middle ground.
It is, yeah, but it's a sentimental song. It reminds you why you're there, and that was perfectly placed as well. But I'd like to make a quick point about the end of set one and then how set two played out. I thought was really interesting.
Totally.
We saw Guitar Hero Trey on Santos, and it was beautiful. We loved it. The energy inside the Gorge was just unbelievable in that moment. And I think everyone's sort of asking, well, how do they top that? They got to play Tweezer now to really get the crowd going, because that first set was pretty hard to top. And it's a good reminder that we shouldn't look at the second set as how are they going to, after a great first set, we shouldn't look at it as how are they going to top that set. I think it's a good reminder, last night to just sort of accept, how the show was going to develop, and then look at it as one show. Because to me, they did maintain that energy just in a different way. They worked through the ambient jams and some of the more quiet jams and mellow jams, but they were really in touch with one another. And then they dropped the perfectly placed ballad, and then you get Possum. And for anyone who doesn't like Possum, I question if they've ever been to a show. It was another raucous version, and I just love that this is a band that can play these intricate compositions, these amazing jams where they're creating melodies on the spot, and then they can bring it home to end of the set with a song about a possum being hit by a car. That's just your good old fashioned tension and release blues rock. And it makes 30,000 people absolutely go crazy. I love it.
Possum is like one of three songs. I think Alaska's the other is in this category as well, of Fish songs that you can drink whiskey to on a front porch, and like that's what it's meant to be there for. And Possum is in early 3.0. I get it. It was played like every other show, and I feel like it was very, very straight. And there's a certain age group of Fish fans that came up hearing Possum, but then hearing it live in early 3.0, and it was, there wasn't a ton of creativity in it. I felt like last night's version was very creative. I felt like it combined that like chuggle nature of the song with a really cool, inventive little jam off of it that spoke to the larger creativity of the show. And you talked about this, like, Sand Down Disease. Go back 5-6 years in Fish history, and that's about as standard of a second set opener that you could get, and with good reason. And the way that they approached Sand, the way that they approached Down Disease was so unique last night. Sand, someone was saying here in the comments that it was potentially the best since Vegas 2014. I would throw Vegas 2016 up there as well, and even Deer Creek 2021 as other really phenomenal versions of Sand. I may be overlooking one or two since then, but this version of Sand reminded me a lot of Dick's 2012. It didn't have the back end peaking jam, but it went into that spacious territory that reminded you of 1999 Fish. It reminded me of Dick's 2012. And then Down with the Z's goes into this Down Disease is, you mentioned earlier, I believe you mentioned Carini as a song you could hear at every single Fish show. Disease is one of those songs that I've probably seen at every Fish show. I don't know. I've seen it like, it feels like sometimes, but I could
Right.
see it at every show. Like, the bass intro, the chorus, the solo, and then the jams that it goes to. And Trey found this riff towards the end before they went into Caspian that like, it signifies what's made so much of this tour special is the band's listening to each other, and Trey in particular will find a riff in his head and will just play it and distort it and weave it in and out of a jam, and that's where you get these really special moments. And so to hear that, even though it didn't lead to a 25-minute version of Disease, it still is like a moment of creativity, and it's like a stopping point in the set where you really recognize the creativity of the band right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I thought to continue the theme, the sand from Deer Creek Night One was amazing as well. But I think one thing that I noticed that was similar between the two versions was that, contrary to a version that comes off the top of my head like Rosemont 2018, which was fun. I think, if I remember correctly, end of set 2, end of set 1. But a little bit more like up tempo, and had that classic tension release type 1 jam. You could tell from the opening notes they're taking their time. And I know there's been some conversation about tempos on the internet, but I personally loved that they were willing to just kind of relax and take their time with that sand. I think it fits the song just a little bit better. Not that I don't enjoy some of the more tab style sands, but to me, you mentioned the melodies and some of the lines that Trey was able to find. That really stood out the whole second set for me. He doesn't have to play 16th notes or play as fast as 1994 Trey to play some truly brilliant music.
Totally.
He's so good at translating these ideas from his head to the guitar, and just incorporating that into the jam and establishing new themes. And that's why I see Fish is to see them all. It's almost like they're writing songs on the spot, but that it's all organic. It's all in the moment. And I think the second set had a lot of that last night.
Yeah, I think the other thing I would say, I agree with all that is, and I think about both Friday night and Saturday night show, the placement of Camel Walk and the placement of Sense and Subtle Sounds. Those are pretty critical moments within the overall set. You're about halfway through, and you're in a position where we could get a pretty standard run-of-the-mill end to the set. They just want to play a bunch of high-energy stuff. Cool. It's fun. It's a Fish show. Not going to complain about, being in the moment there. But where, to my ears, a set really becomes something that I want to go back and listen to multiple times, which I feel I want to go back and listen to both last night and Friday night second set multiple times, is that at a critical moment, they make a song selection that kind of perks the crowd up. Everyone's a little surprised. Nobody was expecting Camel Walk in that spot on Friday. No. Nobody was expecting Sense and Subtle Sounds with the intro at that spot yesterday. And then both of them go into a near 20-minute jam that are very different, show a lot of creativity. You get segue into a Chalk Dust Torture that segues into Slave to the Traffic Light on Friday. You get Bug, one of my favorite songs that Fish has ever written, one of the best ballads that the band has. And as we talked about, a really exciting version of Possum. That moment, that critical moment of, should we play Sense or Camel Walk, or should we play, I don't know, name your 7-minute Fish song that could go in the middle of the second set. It seems like there's a conscious decision on their behalf to really shake up the set list. And I'm liking that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just goes to show we have to appreciate as fans the fact that they're still doing this 37, 38 years. And they're willing to take risks that, almost every other band playing the Gorge is unwilling to take. And that, just from a big picture point of view, is something I try not to lose sight of. But and to your point about Camel Walk and Sense, I think I spoke a little bit about the uncertainty earlier. Well, they're playing the intro. I'm loving this in the moment, but am I part of a gag here? Are they going to actually finish sense, or and where is it going to go? Are we and then for it to be like one of those classic Baker's Dozen versions, some of those 2.0 versions, it was just such a gift. And I think with Camel Walk, it was I think those people who know the song kind of figured, well, it might be 6 to 8 minutes of like little funk, and everyone can bob and wiggle and enjoy enjoy this. But I don't think anyone in their right mind thought that it would be a jam vehicle.
Right.
So the fact that they're still shaking things up like that, it's amazing. And I think we could we're gonna start the drive-in soon and start talking about predictions, but it almost feels useless. I mean, it's so hard to predict this band, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and it's fun too. Sometimes it's fun to do that. Put that speculative hat on, like, oh, maybe they'll do this because they're doing this. But it's when they throw you, a total, left turn, and you sit there and go, oh my god, I was not expecting this song at all. But this is exactly what I want in this moment. That I'm right there with you. Those are some of my favorite moments. I love being proven wrong by Fish. It's just continuously showcase that my perspective is wrong, and I'm very happy about that, because usually that means the band is kind of cooking with magic. So looking ahead here, I don't want to play the prediction game, but you're going you're going to your final show of the year, potentially. Who knows if these Midwest shows are going to happen? That would be amazing. Tell me kind of what are you thinking as you're going into the final show here? I think we're getting a little bit of. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, you broke up just a bit, but I can hear you now.
All right, I'll repeat that. I apologize about that, if everyone out there, for the tech issues on my end. So you're going to the Sunday night show here. Who knows? Maybe there's some Midwestern shows in your future, but potentially the last show for you of 2021. Anything you're hoping to hear? Anything you're feeling like is going to happen tonight?
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of what I'm thinking is, I'm just grateful. I'm incredibly grateful that we're still able to see this band
Totally
playing at this level. It's incredible. But I would love a tweezer. Would love a 3-theme, 4-theme, 5-theme tweezer. But I think more than anything, I'm just hoping to get a good show that kind of complements the first two shows. I can, to be honest with you, this is having done the 3-night run at Deer Creek, and now this, and with the Gorge being a bucket list experience, I sort of find myself in a different headspace entering night 3 than I usually go into Fish show with, and that is really one with no expectations. And I've told myself I try to get to that place before, but it never works for whatever reason. Usually because it's a 1 or 2 night run. So that's where I'm at, to be honest with you, Brian. Of course I want a tweezer, but I am finding myself kind of in this really healthy headspace with no expectations. And we'll see if that lasts throughout the day. But it probably won't. But we will see. I guess if I had to pick, though, just for this, for the sake of showbiz here, it'd be fun to see like maybe some game head shenanigans, or something interactive with the crowd, just to get a sense of however they're feeling about the crowd right now. If they want to open up a little bit and do something funny, or we get a Trey narration. Hey, I wouldn't complain. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, it's we've had a couple goofy shows. I think the Sunday night at Deer Creek was pretty wild and goofy second set. I seem to remember, there were aspects of Atlantic City where the band kind of was, feeling the hijinks and whatnot. But it hasn't really been something that's been like a major focus of the band since they've come back. They've really gone deep. It's been a very emotional tour. It could be fun to see, busting out some narration of some sort, some sort of interaction. I think ultimately I love your take on the no expectations, because going into a 3-night run, as you said earlier, you kind of tend to think of each show as kind of a show within a show, a type of thing. It's the baseball term eternally, the game within the game. And, you hear, okay, this song is played at this point in the larger overall show, or the overall run. What does this say about where the band is at as they're evolving through the weekend? And, I feel like going into this mellow Friday night, it's pretty rocking Saturday night, but still with some like quiet, mellow moments. We could be in for a high energy type of night 3 here. So I'm excited for it. And I'm excited for you to catch the show tonight. Sunday night at the Gorge, man. This is something special.
It's going to be fun. Never miss a Sunday show.
There you go. That's what we say. Well, Ben, it has been a total pleasure talking with you here today. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope you have an awesome show. Get some rest. Stay out of the sun a little bit, through midday, so that you're able to hang with us for the rest of the show.
We're going to go find some aloe vera.
There you go. There you go. That's essential out there. Well, safe travels getting back to the Midwest, and we'll talk here soon, man.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Take care.
Buddy. Talk with you soon.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging with me here. And thank you so much to our guest, Ben Gardner. That was awesome to talk with him. Always wanted to do that. Really excited. Sunday night here at the Gorge. Going to be interesting to see what the band has in store. And then we've got 5 shows left of the summer tour. 2 nights at Shoreline, Tuesday, Wednesday, and 3 nights at Dick's. I'll be seeing my first Fish shows in 2 years. I am very, very excited and slightly overwhelmed as we're getting a couple of days out from it. And I realize that it's suddenly my turn to see the bright lights and hear all the music in person. So thanks everyone for hanging with us here. Once again, before I go, just as a quick reminder, HFPod on tour is presented by Shift Genuine Cannabis. Please go to shiftcannabis.com every day between now and Saturday to register for 2 tickets to Halloween, October 30th and 31st in Las Vegas, as well as hotel and money towards airfare. I also want to shout out our media partner, Jambase. Jambase is always there for us from a promotional standpoint. Plus, they have such great content, such great people that work there, such great information about the larger Jambase and larger musical world. Check out the Jambase podcast. It's really fantastic. I shouted it out on my other show, The Drop, last week. There was a great interview with MC Taylor that you guys should listen to. That all said, we'll be back tomorrow. We've got a couple great guests lined up tomorrow to talk through night 3 of the Gorge, as well as the larger tour in general, kind of where we're at going into Shoreline and Dick's. And keep an eye out. Tuesday morning, HFPod on tour will come out again. Should be my Jay, as well as Jonathan, talking through the last couple of shows of Fish. And nothing but content coming to you guys. We're so happy to be doing this. And once again, thank you so much to Shift Genuine Cannabis for making all this possible. Have a great Sunday, everyone. We'll talk here soon. Take care.